Originally, this video was going to be very different. Originally, this was going to be a video called 5 Reasons That I Hate Deathcore, supposedly. Supposedly part plays in due to the fact that I really don't hate deathcore. It's just a perception that I do that has kind of been granted by either members of the nation, either that or just people who have commented on deathcore related album reviews or videos where it seems as though my opinion has been less than stellar. They've been not a big fan of the fact that I was very honest about some of perhaps their favorite bands. Instead, I've opted to make it this video here, but if you'd like to see the other one, in the comment box below, please include within your comment, I'd like to see the other video or something to that degree, and maybe as a special bonus here in a couple days or something like that, I'll post it just for fun. I want to talk about the deathcore genre, however, because this is something that for me, at least here in 2014, is something that it's kind of been around for a couple of years. Very similar to whenever, and this is kind of very similar to whenever metalcore started to fade a little bit, and I wanted to talk about deathcore a little bit before perhaps that decline starts to happen, before we start to see that gradual, end process where we start to get into whatever the next, hot button metal item is going to be. And I think that 2014 is adequate considering we've been talking about deathcore on this channel for at least 2 or 3 years. And in reality, the bands that have been principal in the genre have been around since before this channel even existed and was starting to sow the seeds prior to coverkillernation even being formed. So this is why I think that people either love or hate deathcore. This is something that's going to be very free form. I'm going to kind of flip-flop back and forth a little bit, so please stay with me. It's definitely something where this is very stream of consciousness, and I'm able to say this, and I'm able to do this from both a perspective as a fan myself or somebody who listens to the music, but also from that which I hear, that which I see, that which I deserve. That's kind of what I observe, rather, not what I deserve. That's kind of what this series is all about. It's all about observation. It's all about not just me. It's all about what I see, but at the same time, it's kind of my feeling on the matter. I feel that a lot of people kind of blindly hate deathcore. And they actually use the term hate, and it's perhaps why they associate hate with me, and I think that that's something that's also predisposed upon a lot of individuals based around the fans, basically that whole if you're not with me, you're against me attitude, something that definitely is not always universally true. So one could easily argue that some people hate deathcore because the fans make them. The fans actually give them that real desire to want to hate them because they claim this so much that they're just like, fuck it, yeah, I do. You guys are all fucking obnoxious jackasses. I fucking hate this bullshit. And that's not fair to the band. It really isn't fair to the bands, even though you may not like them, even though you might not necessarily dig the style, it might not be for you. It's not fair that you have to label yourself as somebody who hates the subgenre just based around the fact that you've been basically told that you're a hater since you don't like them. It's dumb. It's a really dumb argument. It's one that I'm seeing with all sorts of different things here in 2014 and in the past couple of years. It's that whole haters gonna hate or, love me or hate me, blah, 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 bullshit Facebook meme attitude that really just seems to be poisoning this country a good bit. It's nothing. You can't have a neutral attitude anymore. You can't have a neutral position on a topic anymore. You have to either have a position or you're just worthless. You're absolutely, null and void to the argument, which definitely means that you're on the bad side. You're on the side that's against the people. It's definitely not something where there's an in-between anymore, and that's kind of a real shame. I think that a lot of people, though, love deathcore because of the music itself. It's metal that doesn't necessarily need a whole lot of technicality in order to blow people away, but it has the potential to. That's the thing. There are 2, as far as I'm concerned, types of deathcore fans, and that's the ones that enjoy the more simplistic approach that has a very brutal vocalization to it and a brutal sound to it. But then on the other side, we have those that really enjoy the deathcore bands or more of a, I guess, melodic deathcore, even a technical deathcore, where it's really the showcase of the musicianship. It's really a showcase of the technicality. It's what they're able to do on the instruments and how they're able to do it, how everything is kind of crafted. It's something where they become, those very, nerds about it, where it's like, well, he did an arpeggio there, and then he sweeped here, and blah, 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 like that whole musician speak. But it's kind of cool to see those 2 subdivisions, even though many people only associate deathcore with the core simplistic, or should I say, more simplistic side of the subgenre. I feel that some people also hate deathcore because of the sound itself. I think that it's not something that really applies to everybody. A progressive metal fan, for example, may not necessarily be into deathcore because they may not be into growling vocals. Now, you might ask, how can they be a metal fan if they don't like growling vocals? That's something that metal has, like, universally everywhere, right? No, no, no. Take a look throughout your history. Take a look throughout some of the biggest bands of this genre, and you'll notice that that's not something that's present whatsoever. This is something that's become a real, fixation point in heavy metal ever since the formation of death metal, even ever since the 1980s. It's something that's kind of been built within the metal genre and kind of added in later. You don't see a band like Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, somebody from the new wave of British heavy metal movement, and even the thrash metal movement doing things like that. Even though you could even claim that on Kill 'Em All, James Hetfield did have some shouting vocals, and you could even argue that there's some different vocals that you hear on, say, some Testament records that do have some death metal perceptions and points to them, and you would be absolutely correct. We are going to get to the Gathering very soon, I promise. However, this is something that also you have to understand that if this is what your definition of a metal fan is, if this is what your definition of a metalhead is, somebody who enjoys music that is very, very heavy, very aggressive, has a certain level of lyrical value to it, but also has to have growling death metal vocals or pig squeals or something like that, your perception is actually incorrect. That's not all that heavy metal is about. It might be what it's all about to you, but that is not the full story. So, with that said, and with that in mind, we have to also go into a reason why some people may really, really like this music. And that's because it is different than anything else that they listen to. And this goes in, once again, to the whole pig squeals and the whole, death metal vocals, which you could easily get from death metal, you can easily get from grindcore, you can easily get from other subsections of heavy metal. However, these individuals latch on to deathcore because it's something that they can really get into. It's something that maybe their friends helped, get them into. It's almost like a gateway drug into metal or something like that, and it sounds completely different than, say, what they listen to 80 to 90% of the time. This is something where perhaps they're more of a fan of the conventional alternative rock. Maybe they're more of a Volbeat, Five Finger Death Punch type person where there's some traces of that in there. I like to call it radio metal or radio alternative. Either that or perhaps they even are somebody who listens to more rap and R&B, and this is just something that's so out in left field, but they actually like it. That they really dig it, and they really latch onto it, and they really, fall in love with the ideas of a couple of bands of the deathcore genre. Now, there's going to be some members of the deathcore genre that are going to call those guys, fakes, and they're going to call them posers and this and that, and these labels are really just getting ridiculous, and it's really just something that it really makes deathcore a huge turnoff for a lot of people because you see all the conflict there and everything like that, but that's kind of what happens with any trend. Anything that really is a buzzworthy metal subgenre, even if it's not something that's as buzzworthy as, say, thrash metal was in the 80s or even metalcore was in the early part of the 2000s, it's still something where, as a metal fan who's very universal, somebody who really enjoys the entirety of the genre in some way, shape, or form at least, it does become a little bit frustrating to see so much of this attempted segregation whenever it comes to whether or not somebody is a true fan of whether it be metal or deathcore, or if somebody is just a fake or a poser. I understand that if you're somebody who just claims to like a band and you don't actually listen to them, you don't know a damn thing about them, it's just something that's trendy for you to say, you look cooler whenever you walk down the hallway at school or whenever you walk into your workplace, whatever it may be, then yeah, there's a very good chance that you are doing something just for the attention that it's causing and just because it's something that may get you in with somebody that you really want to be in with, whether it be on a relationship potential or whether it just be on a friendship potential. However, whenever you're actually into the music itself, whenever you listen to the tunes and you dig it legitimately and you're not lying to yourself, then you can't be dubbed as a fake or a poser. You're just somebody who has an eccentric taste. You're very eclectic. So really, there's your basic definition of a fake or a poser. Somebody who is just, saying things and saying that they enjoy things but know absolutely nothing about them. Either that or they don't truly listen to it. So there's your definition. There's not a lot of them out there. They do exist and they're annoying as shit. However, it's something where I'm seeing that term thrown around as an embodiment of a wider audience. People who just like one subgenre and not expand themselves to the full horizon. I understand it's frustrating, but that's all some people do. But that doesn't make them a fake. It doesn't make them a poser. It may not necessarily make them as metal as you, but who's really counting? Are you counting? Because that's kind of dumb too. Finally, and I think that this is something that kind of comes full circle, it's the culture that some people really enjoy about deathcore, and some people also kind of don't like. It's this, culture that really seems to have a lot of bearing whenever it comes to the way in which they mosh at the shows, or the way in which they show their affinity for the band, the kind of their attitudes towards other individuals. It's also something where perhaps they are very deep into the subculture of piercings, especially, gauges and things like that. There's a lot of tattooing and things like that, but that's everywhere. That's, in all genres of metal. That's not something where you can just universally point to just one and say that that is the be-all, end-all, ambivalent way in which we define somebody who is a fan of deathcore. So that cultural idea is something that's also very silly, but I see that argued a good bit. Also, I think that it's a real draw-in point for a lot of people, because it is a culture that right now, here in 2014, or, in the 20-teens, does have actually a following. It does have some people in there, and it's not something that seems like it's very niche. It's not something that feels as though they're the only person. That solitude of kind of being the only person on your block that listens to a band such as Solitude Aeternus or something like that. You might be able to find 3 people on your block that listen to Attila, or, 5 people on your block that listen to Carnifex, or maybe your whole entire block listens to Whitechapel. Maybe you just have a really, really deathcore block. But it is something where there's a couple more individuals than the norm that are listening to this material. It is a buzzworthy heavy metal subgenre right now, as I claimed before, and I will continue to stick with that. And that is something where bringing and coming into that culture can sometimes be a little bit easier, because maybe people that are already in the culture that can kind of show you the ropes. It's weird. It's kind of like getting into cultures for music is almost like, getting into a fraternity or getting into a secret society. There's rituals involved. Maybe there's a special handshake. Maybe behind each other's backs you're flipping each other off, and that's the true symbol and sign of your love for them, or I don't know. It's really freaking dumb, but it's something that we all do. It's just our way of kind of distinguishing ourselves, and culturally speaking, this is a subculture that definitely has a lot of legs, and they are bands that are certainly doing very, very well, both in sales and also in gathering fan bases together. And this is also one that is bonded together by a strong core group of bands. Now, I don't say that necessarily as fans of those bands. I'm not necessarily, killer fans, a killer fan, rather, of, a lot of the bands that are considered to be the core of deathcore. However, this is something where they have certainly gotten their name out there. They have also gotten a good number of fans. Their fan base is very strong. It's definitely one that's extremely vocal, both in reality and also as a keyboard warrior on the internet. And this is one, and the final point that I will probably make about the turnoff. The turnoff is the keyboard warrior 100%. It's online. It's something that is not even seen in reality, which is a shame that I even have to mention this, but it is 2014, where the online reality is almost like our new hyper reality. It's almost our new reality, period. However, we still have to, go outside to go to work, unless you work from home, in which case you'd never have to leave your house. It's disgusting. The keyboard warriors are definitely out in force with anything that has to do with any of these bands. Now, of course, that's the basic element of fandom. You want to either defend your band, you want to talk about your band, you definitely want to be engaged whenever it comes to your band, but I definitely see a culture that has a lot of this unabashed shit-talking that takes place whenever somebody has a negative opinion about it. It's something where, if it's not a constructively criticized opinion, it's kind of one where that debate and that argument is already taking and transforming into a juvenile level almost immediately. However, if it's one that's being done with a little bit more constructive criticism, with a little bit more parody, and with a little bit more satire, it's almost just making you look bad, as opposed to making the person who either made the video or made the post look bad, because you're really taking what they said so to heart, as though they talked about your child, either that or they talked about your favorite toy. Or they stepped on your favorite toy, and you really just want to get in their face, come at me, bro, fight me, bro, I drink Monster and watch MMA, bro, and it's just something that makes you look silly and makes the whole entire subgenre look silly, as opposed to really showcasing you guys as a strong, cohesive unit. Now, at the same token, people who are within this that maybe feel maybe feel a little bit empowered. Maybe they feel as though this is something that they need to do. They need to showcase themselves as balls to the wall, as brass as they really can be, based around the fact that they listen to a very aggressive style of music that really does stimulate all of that anger, all of that rage, all of that energy that perhaps has been built inside them for years and years and years. Either that, or perhaps just for 8 hours of work, or a couple of hours at school. Maybe this is pent-up rage based around the fact that some douchebag decided to push you into a locker in school. However, whatever it is, this is a subculture of the subculture, and this is something where it's the largest prevalence that I can tell. It's definitely the keyboard warrior that can either make or damn a deathcore fan, and it could also make or damn whether or not somebody wants to get into deathcore. Because if you see something like that, there's going to be really two things that you're thinking. The first thing is going to be, hey, I kind of want to be an unabashed dick on the internet and basically just run around telling people to come at me, because nobody will, because arresting and internet. Or number two, it's going to turn you off. It's going to kind of make you think that this music is doing something to them. If you're really, really stupid, or potentially from, the South. That's a bad joke. Or, of a sect that is easily swayed. But this is something that can't happen. It's going to be something where it'll turn you on or turn you off is basically the point. The jokes are just there just to be jokes. So there you go. These are a couple of reasons why I think people, love deathcore, or why some people hate deathcore. And I do think, and those who love deathcore, don't freak out on me because I'm saying this and say deathcore will never die. Nothing does live forever. However, the age of prominence of deathcore, I really feel, is already on the decline. It's something that I've noticed even with the start of this year. It is a year that has a strong catalog of titles coming out from the perspective of the deathcore fan. However, one disappointment, and this whole thing is going to fade. It is definitely time for something else to rise. But what is it that's going to rise? What scene is actually going to rise from the ashes and actually take force? Well, we need to talk about that too. So come back tomorrow, because we're going to have an interesting topic. We're going to have one where we're going to talk about why I think local bands fail and why scenes don't make it. So stop back.